Bore da pawb, and welcome to you all on this lovely December morning. My name is Councillor Cheryl Carlisle and I'm the Chair of the Finance and Resources Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Can I welcome everyone to the meeting, which is a multi-location meeting. Can I remind members that translation facilities are available. If you want to make use of this facility, please select the English language option on the microphone delegate unit if you're in the council chamber, and for those attending remotely by clicking on the audio settings tab and selecting English. For those wishing to speak, please press your microphone push to speak button, which is located at the bottom of the microphone console. Similarly, for those attending remotely, press the push to speak tab. Do not use the yellow hand function unless you want to make a point of order. Can I ask that committee members put their mics on first, and once all committee members have had the opportunity to speak, then non-committee members will be requested to put their mics on. In order to maintain your place in the speaker queue, when asking a question, please leave your microphone on until you've received a response and asked any supplementary questions. It would be helpful if members could ask all their questions in one go. Whilst I do not wish to stifle debate, can I remind members that any questions should be focused on the subject matter and to avoid repetition. For those attending remotely, please note that those in the chamber will be enabled to use the chat facility. Remote attendees, if you need to leave the meeting temporarily, please pop a message in the chat function. I expect everyone present and participating in this meeting to conduct themselves appropriately and be respectful to each other. That applies to members, officers and members of the press or public attending. So we will begin with item 1, apologies for absence. And Sally, what have you got, please?
Apologies from Councillor Abdul Khan and Councillor Andrew Wood, and Councillor Tristan Lewis is trying to join but he's having some connection issues.
Any more apologies from the room? No? Okay. We'll move on to item 2, declarations of interest. Any declarations, members? No? Okay. Item 3, urgent matters. I'm not aware of any as chair. Item 4, the minutes, pages 4 to 9. Could I have a proposer and a seconder for those minutes, please? Councillor Gareth, Councillor Charlie, diolch. If everyone would like to show, please. Lovely. Anyone against? No. Those are carried. Thank you, everyone. We now move on to the minutes of the Governance and Audit Committee, pages 10 to 15. This meeting was held on the 27th of October. Please could I have a proposer and seconder to note these minutes? Councillors Gareth and Paul. Okay, if everyone would like to show. Diolch. And against? No, those are carried. Thank you very much. Item 6, questions to Cabinet members, none. And we go on to item 7, to review the forward work programme, the finance and resources one, pages 16 to 22, and the combined one, pages 23 to 45. So if no one's got any comments, we'll have a proposer and seconder for the forward work programme. Lovely. Councillor Charlie, Councillor Gareth, if everyone can show. Excellent, thank you. Anyone against? No, those are carried. Wonderful, thank you. And next page. Item 8, we're going to consider a report by the Chief Executive on the performance self-assessment April to September 2025. This is pages 46 to 157. It's going to be introduced by Councillor Dilwyn Roberts, Cabinet Member for Culture, Leisure and Governance, and Yola McGregor, Strategy, Performance and Engagement Manager, is going to present the report. So, Councillor Dilwyn, bore da.
Bore da.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me? This report accompanies the Council's performance self-assessment for April to September this year. It gives us an analysis of progress, a fair, in my opinion, of our performance, and it says that we are... Sorry, I'm having difficulties hearing Dilwyn. I'll just... Sorry. Hold on, I'll just adjust my volume. Oops. Well, I'll see if that works. Thank you, Chair. What I was saying was that this is a presentation and a report, a fair report of us as a council in our performance and our ability to regulate and to do our duties according national policies since 2015. Can everybody hear now? Thank you. Personally, I'm glad to give you this report this morning, the FROSC committee this morning. It is a financial challenge, like we know, and resilience. Everybody who is part of Conwy, it's obvious in this report on the whole, and I look forward today to your comments as FROSC before I present this report to the Cabinet. Can I also thank the Chief Executive and Yolo and all the officers for preparing this report. It's a very detailed, a lot of work have gone into it. So if I can, Chair, put things over to Yolo. Thank you.
Diolch, Councillor Dilwyn. Yolo?
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd a Cynghorydd Dilwyn.
Thank you, Chair, and Councillor Dilwyn.
I'm pleased to present this report today. It's the second based on the new corporate plan performance framework. I'm particularly pleased because with our last report that we brought to you, the first one on the new framework, fair to say it was a lot of pushing to get the data that we needed, to get the framework agreed, to get it embedded, and to get the data that we needed from services. So the last report was a lot of hard work from my team, but this one, I'm pleased to say, has been far more effortless. The data is coming through nicely now, and the framework, we feel, is better embedded. As a whole, we feel that the report is also a stronger report. It gives a far better sense of performance as a whole in terms of the corporate plan, highlighting both successes and areas for improvement. Forgive me, I'm not going to go through all of the highlights in the report. It's quite lengthy, but I'll just give a quick snapshot, if I may, of the 5 goals. So the resilience goal, to begin with, we've noted a good reduction there in staff sickness absence, down to 10.6 days per full-time equivalent employee member of staff, which reflects our renewed focus on well-being and attendance management. The general fund balance has improved and staff turnover has fallen to 9%. However, we have given the outcome as a whole a red status for our measures as being outside of tolerance, and I think this is a fair reflection given where we are in terms of the financial crisis that we're facing. The environment goal, we've seen recycling rates rise to 70.7%, and over 1,500 properties have been protected from flooding. Street cleanliness is at 100%, however, fly tipping incidences have increased, and road condition highlights ongoing infrastructure challenges. Prosperity and learning, unemployment has decreased and pupil attendance is improving. We've supported 174 people into employment and delivered over 8.9 million in external funding for regeneration. However, business closures outpace new startups, and earnings remain below the UK average. For housing, the number of applicants on the housing register remains high, but prevention work is ongoing. Affordable housing is below target, but there are significant completions expected in the next year or so. We're also seeing positive outcomes from our adaptations and homelessness prevention initiatives. For well-being, leisure centre attendance is up, and we continue to focus on supporting vulnerable children and adults with strong performance in statutory visits and adult protection. Across all areas, our activities are on track largely, and we remain committed to continuous improvement, transparency, and delivering for our communities, despite the challenging ongoing financial circumstances. There are just 3 corrections that I'd like to note in the paper that you've had before you today. On page 61, the measure for council tax incorrectly is shown as red. It actually is amber, given that the tolerance is to be within the upper quartile. So it's a positive, actually, that we are in the upper quartile there, but we're just slightly below our target. So that should be amber. Page 68, we'd elevated Amanda's position to the section 1510. So we've corrected that to section 151. And on page 128, there's reference to the Treasury Management report that went to Governance and Audit. Hello? Oh, sorry, I thought I'd been cut off there. The Treasury Management report that had gone to Governance and Audit, that report was for the 3 months for 2025 to 2026, not 24 to 25. So just some small corrections there that we've made. Otherwise, I'll stress, as I always do, this report is your portal as a scrutiny committee to further topics for scrutiny. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I'm not an expert in all areas. I'll rely on the team of officers here in the room, but otherwise I'll obviously seek out any answers to questions that I can't answer, or recommend that it is a worthy topic for further scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that and for the report, Yolo. Very thorough indeed. Okay, members, let's start with questions. Don't be shy. First question, Councillor Gareth, please.
Diolch. Dwi'n mynd I drio wneud.
I'm going to try and do this in Welsh. I had an email last week mentioning that we should be using our Welsh, so be careful what you wish for. But I'll do my best to go through this. I have some comments and some questions because it's a very detailed report, and it's also, in my opinion, it can give us a few early warnings at places where we should be looking at and looking for. So I'll just start off with on page 60, and it's good news that the staff sickness levels has been improving. I know it's not green, but there is an improvement. But if that does happen, why haven't we seen an improvement in the number of agency staff that works for the council? On page 61, it isn't red anymore, but it's amber. On the council tax that is collected by the council, I don't believe this shows that the council tax isn't efficient, but maybe we should be thinking, well, does this show that our taxpayers are under pressure? And that will show up, in more people who are maybe losing homes, pressures on social services, more children needing help in the schools. And I know that they are already pressures, but the fact that people are struggling to pay council tax, we should really be, is this going to get worse? They won't be able to pay for electric, to keep their homes warm and so on. And on page 63, with the school transport, I think that's a good example of good input, not the desired output when it comes down to it, because there has been really good work, but we're still spending more money on school transport than we've budgeted for. And on page 70, it mentions using CCTV cameras. It'd be interesting to know how many prosecutions and fines and court cases, because we've got more CCTV cameras, are they really making the place better, and what are the results? And then on 71, it's difficult to with a fly tipping going up, 7% is a big increase, but what we don't know is what's behind that. What's the scale of the problem? Is it individuals throwing one bin bag on the side of the road, or is there a problem with people collecting rubbish and then putting them in lorries or vans and then tipping them off, fly tipping on a commercial scale? So we've seen an increase there. What's the reason really? And then on page 79, it mentions people, strangers falling, and then under that it shows the expenditure is something similar, but with costs increasing, hotels and tourism, the reality is the expenditure is less, even though it shows it's the same. So we have to consider these figures when we look at, are we going to get the tourist tax in the area when the number of tourists is falling already? And then page 94, it mentions the sponsors in Areas Park, and I just wanted to know, are the people who are sponsoring us and people in park areas, are they happy with the fact that we don't have concerts and things like that in park areas anymore? And just a comment on page 108 about the mandatory training, I'd say the easiest way of doing that is nobody finishes their probation period unless they've finished their mandatory training, when they go through probation, and then, how are they, if they haven't done the training? And I think that's enough from me. Thank you.
Dear Councillor Gareth, that will keep everyone busy for a couple of hours. Okay. Yellow, fire away.
Where do I begin?
Song there somewhere.
The first question around sickness absence and the agency rate being, so the report is showing that our agency figures are static at the moment. Why that hasn't decreased with sickness absence improving, I think there's probably going to be a bit of a lag potentially in the data. It also depends obviously where sickness absence has improved. So there may be services that are heavily agency dependent where sickness absence hasn't improved. So I can't give you an easy answer to that question. But it is something that I can take back and query.
Yeah,
if that's okay.
Yes, that's fine.
Council tax under strain. I thought maybe, Amanda, you might want to talk about that, because obviously there's a delicate balance between the increase in council tax and what people can afford.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the observation you make, Councillor Gareth, is absolutely right, in the sense of I do suspect it is that people are, because of the cost of living, increasingly finding it difficult to settle the council tax. And I think the trend, the reduced trend, is a trend across Wales. So although we have still retained proportionately a good collection in terms of our performance. As you say, fundamentally there is a problem. I think increasingly with people being able to pay because of cost of living. I think within that specifically for us as well, and perhaps not so much impacting on the performance in this report because that relates to last year, but in terms of the current year is obviously because of the work that we've done with Data Tank around trying to identify avoidance, either intentional or accidental avoidance through single person discount and also the premium. We have also raised a significant amount of additional debit which then needs to be collected. So again, I think in this current year that work around premiums and discounts will impact, but I think the more fundamental problem is the one that you say, which is around collection. I'd also just mention that Welsh Government have recently consulted as well around the whole basis of recovery of council tax debt, because you'll be aware that I don't recall exactly how many years ago, but certainly 2 or 3 years ago, it was changed in the first instance where effectively, and I appreciate this would be in a very extreme circumstance, but the ability for people to be imprisoned essentially was removed, and that certainly again nationally has had some kind of impact. But Welsh Government are working on putting new arrangements in place which will help support those who are struggling with their repayments. So time will tell when that gets implemented. But yeah, I think, as I say, I think you're spot on that. Fundamentally, the problem is the cost of living crisis kicking in, and as you say, we probably need to be sophisticated in our thinking then about, well, what are the implications of that, and what do we need to do about that potentially.
Thanks.
If I can continue, Chair, then the question around CCTV, how many prosecutions and fines there are, that is a far more detailed piece of work than I could possibly give you answers to. I think that's a topic worthy for scrutiny, I would recommend. Similarly, with fly tipping, understanding the scale of the problem, for our next report we can try and give some more contextual data around how many incidents and things like that. But again, scrutiny may wish to call that in as a topic for further scrutiny. And I'll just skip as well to the park areas question in terms of the lack of events and whether our sponsors are content with that position. Again, I don't know the answer to that one. I will raise that one, but again, that might be a topic for scrutiny, so I will query that one. In terms of the tourism tax and income, again, I'm afraid
it was as much a comment as anything.
Yeah, I think
it's a warning for us, really, isn't it?
Exactly. I that will be a decision that councillors have to make when that comes before them. And in terms of the safeguarding, where do I begin with this one? We've had discussions here, obviously, about the safeguarding measure before, and when I left it with scrutiny last time, I said we're either going to take it out and replace it, or we're going to leave it in and make it work. So during the drafting of this report, I did actually take it out. But following conversations with senior management team, we've put it back in with a commitment that we are going to try and make this measure work better for us. But we know there are lots of problems in terms of what the data actually covers, because different systems are catching different things. So schools, for example, are captured in one corner of the organisation, and data for office-based staff is captured elsewhere. So there are inconsistencies in the data that we need to work through. As far as I'm concerned at the moment, though, the position is you don't complete your probationary training unless you have completed your mandatory training. That is the position. So that being the position, I'm more confident in saying the data's just not reflecting that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gareth. Councillor Dilwyn put his hand up part way through that. So, Councillor Dilwyn, if you could just answer the park areas question for Councillor Gareth. I see you've put your hand down again. So, if you could just answer that, diolch.
Yes, of course I will, Chair. Every effort has been made now to get new contracts to perform and events at park areas. We're also working on other events to be held within the county, and as you well know, some already are. It hasn't been an easy time in Pwyllgor, but I'm sure you will well know as well, Gareth, that it was not Conwy that pulled out of the contract, but the company that you're working with that answer. But yes, I'll be bringing reports back, and every effort has been made. Yeah, well,
Diolch, Councillor Dillwyn. And is the sponsor happy, I think, was Councillor Gareth's question.
I have not spoken to the sponsor personally, and the sponsors have not contacted me either. So that is probably a question to one of the officers. I don't know if they know any more than I do.
Is Sarah with us? Sarah Ecob? Are you out there? No? Okay, we shall ask that question of Sarah Ecob outside of this. Diolch, Councillor Dillwyn.
There we are.
You content, Councillor Gareth, with your answers? Yeah. Okay, next, Councillor David in the chamber.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, first of all, there's a few sort of topics, really. The first one is asset management on page 65. Now, the sale of the old council buildings in Old Colwyn, there was a lot of criticism locally at the price it was sold at. I think it was sold for 250,000, and people were saying that's the price of a semi. And that was like 3 years ago, and it was supposed to be turned to a hotel, and yet it's still derelict, you know, and really, people locally are very unhappy about it. We were promised it was going to be a hotel and it was going to create jobs for local people, and those things haven't happened. So really, you know, I think some answers on that would be grateful.
We can ask for, as with the park areas, we shall ask for those answers outside of here. Are you happy to take that, Reen? Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor David.
The other one is, I have to mention, the number one complaint I get, I don't know about other councillors that are here, is always about recycling and the black bins. And we had a problem in Old Colwyn the week before last when the cardboard wasn't taken. I've real concerns that we haven't got sufficient staff and sufficient cover for holidays and for when people are off sick. We do need to put the money in, really. And we talk about fly tipping, you know, and I absolutely do not support fly tipping. But these are the consequences of when we're not actually doing the job that the residents expect us to do. Residents expect us to empty the bins on time and everything to be taken. So I think we've got problems with that. On the home to school transport, it's been given a green, but you know, it's an expanding budget. Every year it goes up, every year. And half of it, we found out, is non-statutory. Really, I don't think that credits a green, really. That is something that does still need an awful lot of work on. On the absences, there may be some improvement, but it's still too high. And are we a progressive authority? Because we're spending too much on people that are not employed by Conwy, particularly maybe in the schools. We need to get people that are actually employed full-time. We're spending so much money and so much of taxpayers' money on agencies and agency staff. So we need a strategy on that. On the school amalgamations, I've always been very sceptical whether they will actually, when everything's done, they'll actually save money. So I think we need more figures on that, really, because I think there's problems with one of the school amalgamations with head teacher, isn't there? I think there's something going on with that, but I don't want to go into detail on that. But we need to look at school amalgamations before we go ahead with them to make sure that they are going to be cost effective and they are going to deliver for the parents and the students. I think that's quite that's enough questions.
This morning.
Sort of a lot,
well, I've got Councillor Mike is kindly going to come in and answer the first one.
First off, I think I'm absolutely delighted with the recycling figures, you know, going up in 1 year an extra 1%, which is meeting our statutory target of 70%. Recycling in Wales is the second best in the world. So I think that's something to be proud about and something that we should be shouting from the rooftops. It has to be said that this sort of area of work is difficult to recruit to. I was speaking to the waste manager only this morning, and I would suggest then there's probably some agency staff being brought in to cover those duties. But some of the jobs, the nappy collection's not a very... No. It's not an advertising job that you can go out. I think ERF are permanently recruiting to these posts, so they are difficult to recruit. When we do miss, don't forget recycling. We go to everyone's household every single week, and then sometimes we'll have a vehicle breakdown or whatever. There are reasons behind that. I am keen to work with the department that if we do get a problem, that we then, and I've spoken to you, Chair, about this, if we do get a problem, that we email the local councillors to say we have had a problem with the vehicle, it's broken down, leave your black bin out, we will come back to collect it as soon as we possibly can. And in some instances it might be, unfortunately it'll be the next collection day, but we will accept side waste with that. So I'm keen to get that message out to local members when we do encounter a problem. But yeah, recruitment's difficult, but I think we're doing remarkably well, and we're only reaching these amazing recycling figures by having monthly bin collections, because basically if you take the capacity away from somebody, they have to think about what they're actually putting in them bins. And when I first introduced the fortnightly bin collections, and I will shut up in a minute, Chair, but when I first introduced that, and I'd still do it today, is if anybody's got a bin that's overflowing, that there is absolutely no recycling in, I'd like to have a conversation with them, and I've never been taken up on that, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Mike.
Could I just come back briefly on that, Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, I come back briefly on that. I did have a meeting with Grant, who was the head of the ERF, and what he explained to me was that the year before last, 30 staff were lost. Staff that cleaned the streets and emptied the bins and did the parks, and were also available for cover when recycling and black bin collection staff were off sick or on holiday. We've lost those staff, and that is the real reason we're having problems. Yeah, the recycling figures are good, yeah, but what people want, they want certainty that they're going to get the bins collected and things, and that cutting staff is the problem. So that's something that I think we need to put more staff into ERF. I think we've cut ERF to the extent now that it's having a significant effect, because I said that is always the number one complaint. I don't know about other councils, that's always the number one complaint. It's always about the bins and the recycling. So can we have more staff back in ERF, and then we're able to cover for the absences and for the sickness? That's what I'm asking. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor David. Well, that's a conversation for the budget, isn't it? I know. And yeah, just on personal note, in Old Colwyn, we've over the weekend had some lovely compliments about our recycling staff and the stuff they're doing, and also the issues that you talk about with the nappies and the continence pads. That can't be a pleasant job, but there's some great staff out there, so I shout out to them for everything that they do. And obviously I will be helping with the recycling figures for the glass bottles over Christmas. That's my personal mission. Councillor Julie, would you just like to touch on Councillor Aaron? I know our thoughts are all with him this morning he's had a bereavement, so if you would like to just touch on that for us would be great. Thank you. David, do you want to just turn your mic off for a second, just so Councillor Julie can come in? Lovely, thank you.
It's not even flashing green.
Ooh.
Not doing anything.
Hang on. Oh, there we go.
Hang on. I can override it. Oh, that's not good. I think I need to take my card out and get back in again.
Yeah, just like with the computer, switch it on, switch it off, it'll work.
There we go. Okay.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sally.
Yeah, just in response to those questions. So home to school transport is still a work in progress. Obviously, we've made a number of changes. We've also appointed a couple of new members of staff who are going to be looking at the transport that's been provided that hasn't been reassessed over time to give families the opportunity to look at maybe there's different ways of doing that. And I will see the benefits of that both for young people, I believe, and certainly in terms of financially as we move forward. And then in terms of amalgamations, so when they come forward to scrutiny, there is a financial element to that we see in any amalgamation that happens, Councillor David. It's usually over a 3-year period of time until the financial benefit to the local authority is realised, because we like to do that so that it's introduced where I think it's a percentage reduction each year to make it easier for the schools once they amalgamate those two budget lines. But obviously it's the wider benefits of amalgamation. So a lot of the amalgamations that have been taking place currently are actually infant and junior amalgamations, and that's about the transition for that young person. They're no longer going to be going to a new school. They'll feel a part of the same school with the same name, same uniform, same governing body, and same members of staff. So there's wider benefits than just the financial impact. But yeah, that's all recorded as part of the democratic process that each of these go through, and the benefits that have, like I said, to the local authority and to the budgets of schools and Conway. So yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Julie. And as you know, I asked a question in Cabinet regarding our home to school transport for our pupils with profound and multiple disabilities, and you assured that the appeals process was in place if any of the parents and carers were unhappy with any decisions with that, because that you know, that's paramount. So yeah, thank you for that. Next question we need an answer to: are we a progressive authority with spending so much on agencies? Anyone wanting to just touch on that? I think that was Councillor David's last. Was that your last one, Councillor David? Yeah. Any takers, Reen?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah, clearly a lot of work has been done in the agency field in terms of, we've had a few reports, haven't we, in terms of the matrix and also from a school's point of view. So a lot of work is going on. I don't think we'll ever get to a stage that we don't have agency staff because of the nature of the work we do. Some of the work, when we don't have cover in place, we would breach our statutory obligations. So we inevitably have to have cover in terms of agency. And in relation to Year F, that's always been the case. Always been the case that you will have people phoning in on the morning ill. Without agency, we wouldn't be able to take the trucks out. So that's always going to happen. Now, clearly, it's a valid point. We do need to minimise that as much as we can. And I know a lot of work has been done within the service around trying to promote roles within the service. They've been doing that for a long time. And they've had a few pushes this year in terms of recruitment, because obviously, if you can get a bank of casual staff, for example, rather than relying on agency, it's much better, much cheaper. Having said that, as I said, you'll never get rid of agency completely, because you always need to be there to undertake the roles that we have to do. So yeah, it's a fair point, and I know there's a lot of work going on in that area. Thank you.
Diolch, Reen. Thank you, Councillor David. Next, we've got Councillors Louise, then Paul, then Charlie. Okay, Councillor Louise.
Diolch, and thank you for the report. I really like the way it's set up, and lots and lots of information to take on board. As ever, I'm going to focus on the economy side of things. So first thing, I was just really for information for everybody, under the North Wales Growth Deal, which is page 84. I can see the information you've taken is from the last quarterly report, January to March, but things have moved on from there now. So it's now called Academy Croeso, because I went to the launch 2 weeks ago. And there's those figures, there's not as much figure being invested, certainly not up to 19 million. Two of the partners have dropped out of securing any funding, a part of it, but not taking any money. The reason I know all this is because I was really concerned that out of the 5 spokes that, other than renovating the Clondricklow College building that's already there, they're not doing a new build now, they're just renovating it. There was nothing within the County of Conway, within the Academy Croeso package. So I have been working on getting something for Llandudno, which is obviously one of the main tourism destinations in North Wales. And we're looking at a training hotel and creating a 6th spoke within the Academy Croeso programme. So this is a project very close to my heart. So it was just to update you really, it's now called Academy Croeso. And I've been working with Clondricklow College as well to make sure we get apprenticeships in all the Llandudno hotels from the college, which is something which hasn't happened over the last 10 years really. So that was just to give you some information about that. Happy to share outside the meeting. The other thing was in page 86 on Destination Conway. And again, maybe this is perhaps a topic for scrutiny. I'm not sure it's big enough, but there was a bit of disquiet on Destination Conway with the Gwynedd and Area Sustainability Visitor Economy Strategy. We didn't particularly, from feedback, feel that it kind of fit what we wanted for our tourism destination in Conway. So I don't know if that was ever fed back to you really, but the reason we've got a memorandum of understanding, I'm not sure that was what actually happened. So perhaps I'd need to find more information about that. But I don't think their strategy over in Gwynedd didn't really sit easy with ours in Conway. And obviously Destination Conway also don't feel as loved as they used to be, don't feel as engaged as they used to be. But that's a conversation I can perhaps have with with the team to make sure that they are actually listened to and heard to about tourism. Page 95 is about the apprenticeships, which is great to see, the 16-week apprenticeships. So my question was, is there any specific cohort of young people that are focused in these placements, and how many are we offering on an annual basis? So that's a question there. And then finally, the other question is a little bit random, but it did throw me a little bit on page 59, when it said that we have an 80% reduction in media mentions, positive or neutral media mentions. So technically the council is not seen in the best light. And there could be many reasons for that. Double-digit tax rises, reduction in services. But the two reasons that have been picked out are political changes within the council, which I don't quite understand what that means, because we've still got the same coalition in place. And then incidents such as removing St George's flags. I can't really remember much about that. I remember a red cross being put on a roundabout in Llandudno, but I just wondered why those two things were brought out to be the reason why media mentions were now more negative for the council. Thank you.
Diolch, Councillor Louise. Hello.
Thank you, Councillor Louise. I think your query around the Destination Conway plan actually worth checking maybe with the Economy in Place scrutiny, whether they're going to be getting a regular update on that particular plan, but that I think would be the forum to direct those queries. Page 95, apprenticeships, cohort, what our cohort focus is and how many of them, I'm afraid I don't know. I will query that one for you and get an answer. In terms of the media mentions, I'm going to hand over to Brian, if I may.
So the media mentions are focused around the media sentiment is basically a data term that we use for analysing media. It's based on a variety of media responses, and during the time period for this report, there were many articles around flags in the media which were not categorised as being positive media coverage. This term doesn't refer to our view of reader emotion or anything like that, so it is just because of the prevalence of the amount of coverage around flags in that time period.
Was it critical?
Hang on.
You turn off. Yeah?
Charlie, do you just want to turn yours off? Oh,
hey, I'm there now, cool. But was that specific? Why did Conway Council feel the heat with the flags? Because they're all still up. I can't remember the incident. Why did it relate to Conway Council, the flag thing, specifically?
It was based on mentions around Conway Council that were associated with the flags and the flag issues. So it was around the sentiment and the like I say, the media mentions that happened within that fixed time period. So it's just part of a media analysis report that we collect.
Yeah. Well, obviously you're just collecting the data and presenting it. I just don't quite work out how flags has meant that our media mentions have gone down 80% positive or neutrally. It doesn't make sense to me. And the political changes, what was that about?
That was political changes around the change in leadership, the stepping down of the previous leader and the election of the current leader, and a lot of the mentions in and around that were not classed as positive in the way that they were portrayed within the media.
Right. I just find that hard to believe that there's not other things that created. It's quite a big drop, isn't it? 80% of people of media mentions not. Yeah. Okay. You're only reporting what you're saying. Right.
Reen, if you wanted to
just
come in on there, yeah.
Just on the Ambition North Wales stuff. Yeah, that will. They always come to scrutiny annually, I think, and probably Alwen will be coming at some point during the year. I know the CJC will have its own scrutiny arrangements as well, so there may be an opportunity to raise some issues around that when they do come here. I know there is some work going on around the tourism work. I was in a review last week where it was mentioned. So I think there will be more detail to come out on that, and also the other projects that are developing through our Ambition North Wales' agenda. So it may be that would be, it will come to scrutiny at some point. I'm not quite sure when, but it usually does around springtime. So there'll be an opportunity then.
Yeah. Okay. Lovely. Thank you. And next we've got Councillor Paul. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Chair. Yellow, I gave you a heads up on this on Friday. I also want to question a bit on the capacity issues, which have already in part been discussed. It seems to me that in both appendices, both the external reports and the internal report, that often where our performance is less effective than we would want it to be, part of the explanation is often capacity issues, in that we're not cited on it, not that we're not planning action going forward, but things are not happening at a pace which we would all be comfortable at. Now, you've suggested to be accepting of further portals. I think you used the word in your report. I just like a further paragraph, I suppose, in your reports that particularly records where there are capacity issues in performance, that things aren't going as well as we want to go, usually because we haven't got enough staff in that area to do the job. Because I think that's important, and I'll give you a couple of examples which are important to me, particularly. In the area of housing, for example, obviously we don't have our own council houses, so our regulatory function is very, very important for our residents who live both in residential social landlords' housings and also with private landlords. And in my patch, we have many families, many individuals living in very poor housing conditions. Yes, low market rents, but very poor housing conditions. Particularly of concern is water ingress, mould, black mould and damp. And in my judgment, because of the significant under-resourcing of our regulatory functions, not that those officers don't do good work and are working incredibly hard, but in order to collect the evidence to take action against whether it's those private landlords or social landlords who are basically not doing their task, that's a major problem. Another area which I'm concerned about, and this won't be a surprise to anybody, is in social services, where in this report, again, there's a report of things going in a wrong direction in terms of child protection conferences held within statutory timescales. That must be a worry, and I suspect that's again partly to do with capacity issues. And again, we debated it at Social Care and Health last week, and I fully accept that I was in a minority, but I was very disappointed there, where again it was identified there were major capacity issues, and we have nearly 300 very vulnerable people awaiting assessment for deprivation of liberty safeguards, and the decision was that we were deferring a business case until 2027-28. Now, again, it all comes down to priorities and if you like, political decisions about priorities, but I think we should have highlighted in the performance report every time it comes up the detail of those capacity issues and draw it together, because I think then we would see particular trends.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Paul. I have done my homework, so I have got some additional information just to help explain where we sit at the moment. But I like your suggestion of a paragraph that brings it all together, and I'll take that forward for the next report. So across the two appendices, in Appendix 1 there are 5 references to us having a lack of capacity in certain areas. They relate to the facilitation of community and regeneration plans, the delivery of the wellbeing assessment, adult social care reviews, complaints handling, and older people care demand. In Appendix 2, there are 3 references relating to the Time to Change Poverty in Wales audit report, the Social Enterprise audit report, and the Cracks in the Foundation Building Safety in Wales audit report. There's a recognised list of hard to recruit roles across the authority. So they do cover social care in both adults and children's, occupational therapists, building control, planning officers, CCTV, HGV drivers, school catering, adult residential care workers, and we know as well that there are retention challenges, for example, in Galw Gofal. So these are the things that we're all aware of, but I don't want to leave you with the impression that all that work isn't happening. You know, it's going to be different in different cases, but there will be mitigating actions and work taking place to recruit and retain. In every service performance review we've held thus far, I think it's fair to say that capacity issues have been highlighted in all of them, as have financial pressures. And as you say, it's about prioritising, and those are the conversations that we're having all of the time. The child protection conferences, though, that you specifically mentioned, we did have a conversation about that in the pre-meeting, didn't we, Chair? And the director was with us, and she gave us assurance that the number was only relating to a very small cohort. So it's a handful of conferences that, by this indicator, haven't happened within statutory timescales, but there are legitimate reasons why that would be the case. Yeah. And I'll pass over.
Yeah, thank you, Steph.
Am I on?
Yeah.
I'm on. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Paul, for raising the question. So we look at the detail of all our performance indicators, and what was clear with our child protection conferences is that there is a need to rearrange if parent participation can't happen. So for these individual cases, although there are significant capacity challenges within children's services, these were in connection to rearranging the dates to support the parents to attend.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steph, for that. You can thank Councillor
Yeah,
Paul.
thank you very much, Ellen.
Everything answered? Lovely. Next, we've got Councillor Charlie in the chamber, then Councillor Anne online. Councillor Charlie, thank you for patience.
Joel Kader, the Barada Pab. Yolo, thank you very much for the report. I say it's the second time we've used this format. I'm pleased to see that sort of it's getting a bit easier in terms of feeding that data in, and I really welcome your suggestion that it gives good focus to look at other areas that we might want to scrutinise moving forward. Particularly pleased to see the significant drop in the sickness days. We know our staff are our biggest asset, and as a barometer of the health of any organisation, seeing that improvement is really, really encouraging. As a scrutiny committee, we're right to focus on the areas of concern, but I think it'd be remiss not to mention how much good stuff there's in there, despite the significant pressure local government's been under for a number of years in the last 3 years. Specifically, you know, there's lots and lots of green in there, which is really, really positive, and I think we should also acknowledge that. I agree with Councillor Gareth with the fly tipping. That is an interesting thing, isn't it? It's not the number of events. The number of events is a potential cumulative impact of, you know, one massive event like we had in Oxfordshire recently, where it went on for months and wasn't stopped, is far more detrimental than isolated incidents. So, you know, I would welcome looking at that further moving forward. And again, these snapshots, there's a pattern building up, isn't it, where you can see it over time and see where improvements are happening, where things are perhaps not going as we would like. But with that in mind, Chair, I'd like to then move recommendation 2.2. Diolch.
DL, Councillor Charlie, and apologise to those of you in the chamber who haven't to put your coats on. It must be budget cuts turning the heating off, so bring a bigger coat next time, everyone. Thank you. Next, thanks for moving that, Councillor Charlie. Have we got a seconder before we go to next speaker? We'll come back to that then. Okay, Councillor Anne online.
Thanks, Chair. I'm happy to second Councillor Charlie's proposal. I think I'd also like to join the voices that have complimented Yolo and his team, and indeed the council team, in producing what I think is the best performance report I've seen in all the time that I've been a councillor, and that's quite a number of years. I think it's comprehensive, I think it's focused, it's actually readable, which sometimes these things can be quite difficult to digest. And really actually helps us as members across the council to keep our finger on the pulse and to do the same for officers as well. It's good to know that the system is bedding in, and actually that tells me that it's being owned by the different services, because that's where the sort of the implementation data ought to come from, I would assume. So well done to all. I think it would be remiss of me not to make comment about safeguarding, because I think for the last God knows how many years the same issue arises, and obviously I make comment on it, and Gareth has got there before me. I'm really pleased that senior officers have resisted the call that this isn't solvable and it isn't showing us in a good light, so let's not report on it. I think it absolutely needs to be reported. I think on page, I think it is, was it 113? It says it's our top priority, and we all are trained in safeguarding as members, whether it's in school or as in the whole council. So I actually think we really need to pull our socks up in this area. And it actually gives us a bit of a concern about all mandatory training, if not all training, because it doesn't show us persistently year on year getting better, or if it's about data, which I quite often have the answer of. We don't seem to be getting a handle on our data, and that's equally a bit of a worry. So just those sort of comments on safeguarding. I agree there's a lot of green on this, Charlie said that, and any comments that I make are in the context that there's a lot of really good work being done, however challenging it is given the sort of capacity issues that have been discussed. But one of sort of the two things I want to bring up is on page 85, and it's about place plans. Now, place plans, it says we're green and we're on track, and I presume we are, otherwise y'all wouldn't have highlighted it as such. But, you know, with 33 town and community councils, I think we have, of which 7 of those are towns. I think to have only 3 towns with a place plan doesn't mean that we've got much voice going into our thinking and acting, and I'm really disappointed about that. I think given our challenging position with finance and resources, we need our communities to be stepping up and to be as resilient as possible. And I don't think three town councils or three communities having place plans is where we really need to be. Now, I do understand that our team that are involved in this have been really, really busy with the RLDP, but I would really ask us, now that we're about to go in to the next phase of the RLDP in terms of consulting with the public and then eventually going out to examination, that perhaps that our officers can be really doubling down on this, because I don't know what the barriers are to actually having communities coming forward, and I don't know what else we could be doing to make it easy for them to bring forward their voice, because I know in Pemamar, all too often, particularly in planning issues, my voice and the voice of our community has been failed to be listened to, and that really isn't good enough. So I would really ask for some sort of focus to be put on sort of place plans. And then the sort of second area I'd like to talk about is on sort of page 78, I think it is. It talks about goal 3. And I must admit, when we put goal 3 together, and we all agreed it, I was a bit sceptical, if I'm honest, because it puts economy in there, it puts poverty in there, it puts learning and skills in there. So it's a heck of a busy goal to be actually both working on, reporting on, and actually sort of having indicators on. And when I look at the indicators, I mean, you won't be surprised when I'm looking at potentially sort of at schools. There are 4 indicators out of 12, but to be frank, are they really the key priority indicators about educating our children? Because 2 of them are about attendance, and I'll come back to that. One of them is about Welsh and accessing Welsh, and the other one's about 16 to 18-year-olds not in education or training. So in terms of the curriculum and the challenges around all the sorts of things like ALN and the estate that we've got, and I could go on, it just seems to me that, you know, given that 40% of our funding goes on education in schools, we're not really drilling down that much in terms of the performance. So it's just pause for thought from me. But if I go back to attendance, now I know that Eston, that was a recommendation for us as an authority, that we really look at driving pupil attendance. And I can see that whilst we're in the red, we're better both for primary and secondary. But in this recent term, I think there was a new attendance policy came out, and I'm not sure if this has come from Welsh Government or whether it's from ourselves, but that policy allows every pupil to have 10 days of unauthorised absence every term. And when you accumulate that across the 3 terms, it therefore means that 16% of attendance, of pupils' attendance, can be unauthorised, and there isn't any action taken against them. And of course, therefore, that is on top of that there may well be some authorised attendance. So I just wonder, is that something that we can influence and perhaps change, or are we just constrained by the Welsh Government's policy on this? But, you know, given that education is really important, and if you're not there, you're missing out, and if you come back, you're causing strain on our staff and other pupils. It's an area I think that we should really try to look at doing everything we can. So I wonder if we can actually do something about this. Thanks, Chair.
Diolch, Councillor Anne. Iolo.
Thank you, Councillor Anne, and thank you particularly for your very kind comments about the report. You can be assured I'll be leaving here and going back to the office saying it was the best performance report that Councillor Anne has seen in all her time as a councillor. I will be quoting you word for word. On the place plans, I'm afraid I don't know much of the background detail on this as to why there are only 3. I suspect, again, it's a huge capacity issue. I don't know if Rhyn or Amanda know any more on the place plans, but I can query that, I suppose.
Iolo, we will add that to the list of, we have a few things, don't we, that we're going to ask for topic selection forms for at the end of this, when we're doing the recommendations. So we'll add that in, thank you.
On the education indicators, it has been for many, many years an area of frustration for anyone who's a performance manager in terms of what we can measure, what we can report on, and what we can benchmark against in terms of education. I I think what we've achieved with this report is a compromise, because we have included on page 84 in the activity table a more comprehensive narrative on where we stand in terms of education improvement. So one of the key things that we obviously have responsibility for as an authority is school standards, and part of that is what does our ESTIN profile look like. So we have included a narrative in the report there in terms of what our ESTIN profile looks like for our schools here in Conwy. In terms of attendance, I again can't answer with much confidence, but I would imagine we are constrained by Welsh Government policy here. I know that policy's only recently been reviewed, so I would be assured that our officers are diligently applying that. Otherwise, again, potentially a topic for the education and skills scrutiny agenda, I would suggest.
Diolch. Thank you, Iolo. Councillor Julie's going to come in first on that.
Thank you, Chair, and then I'll bring Lowry in to pick up a couple of the points. Just in terms of the measurements, obviously in the past we were able to measure in terms of outcomes, GCSE A-level. That's something that was changed, and the measures from ESTIN, from everybody, are very different from where they were at. So I appreciate what Anne's saying, and I think over time, now that we have the new curriculum and that the new exams will take place next summer, we'll begin to see what that new curriculum looks like. The outcomes obviously won't be measured as we used to before, but ESTIN's way of inspecting has changed, and it's about the added value for a pupil, regardless of just what used to be how many A star to C did they have. This is about added value in terms of their education. So I think over time there probably will be opportunity maybe to look at that, but it's something that's going to take a bit of time to work through. As Yola has said, our ESTIN profile is incredibly good, and that's something that can help us in terms of measuring where we're at in terms of our schools. But in terms of specifics, I think that those days have changed somewhat, because there was a shift away from schools being put against other schools in terms of what their outcomes were, and it should be about, like I said, that added value to education for a young person doing better than they're expected to do. In terms of the 30 days given per year, that's something that Lowry's going to come in on now, because that's not something that I really understand what Anne's referring to. So, Lowry, did you want to come in on that point?
Thanks, Councillor Julie. Dr. Lowry. No, on mute. Push to
Can you
speak.
hear me now?
Yes. Great.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the questions. I'll just start on the latter point. In terms of the performance, Councillor Anne, we're going to be bringing a paper to the Education and Skills Scrutiny Committee. I think it's around about March. So that will explain to members how we are monitoring schools, how we are targeting intervention and support, and how we are obtaining that information and data on learner outcomes. We are working with Welsh Government as a local authority, because I think we have moved into a new way of working in light of the Education Improvement Service, the disbanding of the regional consortia, and of course the School Improvement Framework. So we'll bring some narrative around that to elected members during our Education and Skills Scrutiny Committee, and we'll also describe some of the work that we're involved in producing a data framework, which will be a national framework. So we'll hopefully clarify some of those matters later on in the spring. In terms of the attendance, you'll see that the attendance in our secondary schools has improved. It's gone from 86% to 88%, and that was between 24 and 25. And also the attendance in the primary sector has improved as well marginally, so going from about 91 to 92. We know that they still need to be improved, and I know that it is still colour-coded red, but I think it is really important to note that we have, as a local authority, got quite an ambitious target here, which we set pre-COVID, and we've kept that in place. And our target means that no learner should miss more than 10 days of school, because we think it's really important to try and achieve that level of attendance. You'll be aware as well as governors that every school now has adopted our new attendance policy. I've also written a number of letters to parents over the last term, really reinforcing the importance of attendance and the wider benefits of attendance, which isn't only, of course, learner outcomes. We want to support heads in our schools to actually implement that attendance policy and to make sure that they've got the tools and the support from us in terms of our fixed term penalty notice processes, and also in terms of the warning letters. So we are having quite I think quite a bit of backlash from parents at the moment because of that consistent application of the policy. I think that's a good sign, because I think head teachers feel that they've got the support of us and that there is a consistent application of this policy across the local authority. So it's an area we're closely monitoring. It's an area that we are supporting schools to continue with. And we have brought a scrutiny paper, I'll correct you there. We brought a scrutiny paper early on in the year around our attendance, which was our belonging and engagement paper. So we are more than happy to bring something back. I think it's too soon at the moment.
Diolch, Dr Lowry. The sound quality was a bit bad there, but Councillor Anne, did you get that? Are you happy? Do you want to come
I got
back?
most of it, but not quite all of the last piece of Lowry's comment. One of the sort of just supplementary questions for a bit of clarity is, are the 16% of unauthorised attendance that's allowed with the 30 days, is that Welsh Government policy, Lowry, that we have no ability to influence or change?
If you leave your camera, yes, leave your camera off, Dr Lowry. Thank you.
Yeah, it is Welsh Government policy, Councillor Anne. However, I'll caveat that it's why we have our own processes, so our internal monitoring processes as a local authority. And I think, you know, it is on the up. The work still needs to be done, but it is on the up. And I think the attendance dashboards that we have created now, which every school has sight of, they can benchmark themselves compared to their cluster, compared to other schools across the local authority, and we also, as part of that dashboard, provide attendance data on groups of learners, so gender, girls, boys, those who are eligible for free school meals. So I think that the amount of data that we've got is really detailed, and I think we've got, for the first time ever in Conway, a real buy-in from our school leaders to be transparent and share that data openly. And I think by doing that, that's where we're going to see improvements.
Thanks, Lowry. I mean, I suppose I just struggle with the Welsh Government policy, which you've just clarified, that every pupil can have 2 weeks unauthorised absence every term. I mean, I wouldn't call it generous in this context. I'd call it foolish, to be honest with you, and really concerning. But obviously we have to work around, and you have to work around Welsh Government policy. And I understand, you know, from what you've just described you're doing lots and lots to try and influence things for the better. And obviously there is some progress being shown there in the results, so thanks for that.
Councillors Jeff and Gromway online, can you turn your cameras off, please, if you're on your phones? Diolch, thank you. Councillor Paul, did you want to just come in?
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate you allowing me to come in. I just want to build on something that Anne was saying, really, about data collection and therefore highlighting our performance. Whatever we think about Estin and our Estin profile, which is good, I accept. Each of our schools conduct CAP tests which indicate pupils' potential. So our schools know, for example, for their year 11s, the potential of those children to leave with a C+. And so they're very clear at what the potential of those students are, and then when the results come out, how close they are to meeting that potential. And that obviously very much drills down onto the added value that the schools made from the teaching and learning, but also that key issue of the attainment gap between...
Councillor Paul, just thinking, Dr Lowry did say she was bringing a report to education in March. Could we, or ask her to answer this outside?
But I don't understand why we can't use that data. Again, this point about a portal, an extra portal, that we can see quite clearly in our overall performance as a local authority. Obviously, individual schools will perform differently, but our performance on that added value and that attainment gap, because my understanding is our schools collect that data presently. So all that we would need to do was collate that data, for example, for our secondary schools by bringing that data together, and then that would provide the local authority. Obviously, I totally respect Larry's going to bring a report forward, but it's a bit... I don't quite know why we haven't drilled down on that earlier.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Paul. We'll ask that. And whoever, the musical interlude there, thank you very much for that bit of light relief. Great. Before we go to the vote on this, I've got 2 questions and 1 comment, please. Yola, when are we going to see the reports and the results on the county conversations and the staff survey? When we met with our union colleagues last week, Fran said more analysis was needed, but have we got dates for those 2 really important reports, please? Because that gauges how our staff and the wider public see the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The county conversation data will be included in this report in future. So the next iteration of this report that you will get probably in June will include the results of the county conversation survey. In terms of the staff survey, I can't commit at the moment, but I can query that. The survey only just closed, I think, last Friday, and my team at present are engaged in the panel performance assessment that's taking place this week, and we've got Christmas and New Year coming up, so it's going to take a little while for the analysis of that survey to come out, but I will query and I'll liaise with the committees around when that can be forthcoming.
Lovely. Well, we can add that to, I know how under pressure the department currently is. We can add that because we have a list here, Sally and I, of things that I hope Councillor Charlie will add to the recommendations of further questions. That's, I think, the neatest way to do it. My second question or comment, I've been approached in my capacity as carers champion about the timing of home adaptations by the Motor Neurone Disease Society, and I'd like to meet with Katie and Councillor Stephen to better understand that and how we can further accommodate the sufferers of this really cruel disease, which seems to be on the rise in Conway. So we will add that to our list of topics that we're going to ask for to come out of this report, by the way, which is absolutely excellent. And just for, and this is not for discussion at all, given previous restricted content discussions, but those of us who read the Betsy Cadwallader board papers last Thursday will have found out via those board papers that the West Conway Health Precinct has now been shelved by Betsy and the money sent back to Welsh Government. It's an absolute and utter disgrace what they've done. It's been shelved to possibly 28, 29, and those members of us that we get to find out, given all the focus we've put on our concerns about GP services and health within Conway, and obviously the health emergency that's out there, it's absolute and utter disgrace that they've done this, and to send the money back to Welsh Government, well, that just says it already, doesn't it? So that was my comment, but that's not for discussion, because obviously we had restricted content discussions about that. So we've got, moving now to the votes, we've got Councillor Charlie proposed and Councillor Anne seconded, but we have got in there, if you're agreeable, Councillor Charlie, we wanted further info on the CCTV, the prosecution. Sally's detailed.
We either need more information about why they want these reports to come, or you need to encourage people.
So topic selections for each of these. Okay, fine. Well, let's go then. Topic selections will be on the issue around the CCTV and the prosecution, the park area sponsor, the fly tipping, place plans, staff survey. Yes, so we'll ask for topic selections and further information on those. So thank you for the excellent report, Iolo, on that. We've got a proposer and a seconder. Matt, did you want to come in?
Yeah, can just for some clarity, Chair, really, obviously not all necessarily for this committee. Presumably there'll need to be some thought in terms of what the most appropriate scrutiny forum is for each of those matters, and then go through the topic selection process so that the forward work programme from each of the committees can obviously be adjusted accordingly, and make sure that they're heard at the right time, and that there's the right amount of time to consider those things as well.
But I'm very keen that, given the scrutiny we've had this morning, that none of these topics escape the scrutiny and what members have proposed. So thank you very much for that. Great. Okay, we'll get the forms ready. Sally kindly helping us with that. So we've had a proposer and a seconder. So if we could open the vote, please. Excellent. And if everyone would like to vote, wonderful. Oh,
is it not working? Okay.
Hang on, Councillor David. Sally will come to the rescue.
Normally just comes up, doesn't it?
Okay, is that everyone voted? Everyone voted online?
Yep.
Okay, lovely. If we could close the vote, please. And that was carried unanimously. Diolch to Iolo and team. Thank you for the excellent report, and good luck with your all your work this week. Difficult, busy week. Okay, we now move on to the next item, which is the local government budget 26-27, pages 158 to 169. Councillor Chris Cater is going to introduce it, and Amanda Hughes, Strategic Director, Finance and Resources, is going to present. So, Bore da, Councillor Chris online.
Bore da, pawb. This report, as you know, Chair, is the first in a series building up to Conway setting a balanced budget for 2026-2027, and as such, this morning it can only contain preliminary details. The provisional settlement released last week will be followed by the final local government settlement in mid to late January, but Chair, there's no doubt that we have a serious financial pressures and difficult choices ahead of us. Our options in tackling Conway's resource shortfall remain what we discussed at the budget working groups, looking at budget reductions, looking at efficiency savings, or curtailing certain services. So that's one option we've got, and the second option is increasing council tax, of course, and the third one is applying non-recurring funding from reserves and balances, which you know that our section 151 officer Amanda Hughes has strongly advised us to resist. And we know there are inherent risks with all of that, each of those. But I would like to say that members shouldn't immediately conclude that the shortfall we'll have in front of us has to be totally covered by a high council tax increase. There's much more work to be done. So with that, I'll hand over to Amanda, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Chris. Amanda.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Chris, for the introduction. So this report, as outlined, effectively sets out sort of the first part of our journey in moving to setting a 26-27 budget. You'll recall in September that the business planning framework was approved, and in that report I gave an early indication of the likely pressures that we were facing, and I think at that point it was around 22 million. Obviously, substantial detailed work has now been undertaken to formalise, I guess, in a bit more detail those estimates of what those pressures are, and effectively that is set out in Table 1 of the report in monetary terms. I guess just quickly to take you through some of that, just so that members are clear about some of the factors that lead to those pressures, and also clear about the assumptions that we're making within those. So pay, as usual, is obviously a significant element of the pressure. Again, just to confirm for any members of the public that might be listening, the pay awards are set nationally in the context of the Teachers' Pay Award that is set by Welsh Government, and in terms of local government staff and the other smaller pay bodies, they're set effectively by national pay bodies across the UK. So we have no influence over the pay awards that are set for our staff, but obviously we have to fund the consequences of those decisions. What I would also observe, though, is that the pay awards for local government staff, in particular, teachers tend to fare slightly better, but for local government staff in particular, often fall well behind inflation and in fact other public sector workers. So within the budget forecast here, I've made an assumption in the context of next year that the Teachers' Pay Award will be at 4% and the local government staff pay award will be at 3.5%. Obviously, those pay awards haven't been determined yet, so I am having to make what I believe to be an intelligent estimate. And in terms of sort of the history of pay awards and in terms of sort of where inflation is, etc., I believe at this stage that they are hopefully reasonable estimates. To the extent that I've misjudged it either way, then obviously I guess if I've misjudged it in terms of I've overestimated, then that will be of benefit to us. To the extent I misjudged it and it's over, then obviously that will be a pressure in the year. So obviously members need to be happy with the basis of those assumptions. The other thing relating to pay that has actually been of or will be of huge benefit to us for next year is that the Gwynedd Pension Fund, which is the pension fund that our local government staff are part of, has been subject to a triennial actuarial valuation. That happens every 3 years. It's subject to an actuarial revaluation where the actuary of the fund reassesses and looks at the assets and liabilities of the fund and how well effectively the future costs of its pension obligations are funded. In this triennial valuation, there's been a positive impact for us in that the fund finds itself well funded in that sense, and as a result of that, the actuary is advising the pension fund that the employer contribution rates can actually reduce from 19.6% to 16.6%. And that will have a positive benefit for us as an authority wide, and that will reduce our employer pension contribution costs down by around just shy of £3 million. So that's obviously a benefit. We then obviously have got capital financing costs. I've made an assumption at this stage that the capital programme will be set around with the need to borrow around £12 million, and I've built in the consequences of that. If members, however, determine a larger capital programme than that, then that will have further revenue consequences that will need to be built in. So just to make that link, that capital decisions on capital have a direct consequence on the revenue budget, and as I say, to the extent members choose a bigger programme, then that will have costs that need to be added in. You'll be aware we obviously always get a levy from the North Wales Fire Authority. So again, I've made an assumption about, based on early information from the Fire Authority, about what that's likely to be. And then we have some various other changes, which I won't detail because they're various minor things. But the big one then, you'll see at the bottom of that table 1, is I've built in around £15 million for business cases and service demand. You'll recall we changed our approach a little bit over the last couple of years, where I think historically every pressure, regardless of the nature of it, was put through as a business case, which but in reality there was no choice about some of that. So a business case in a way suggests you've got a choice. There's a decision to be taken about whether you can support it or not. Certain of our service demand is essentially inflationary uplift. So, for instance, the uplift for our residential care homes, for instance, is an inflationary uplift based on pay awards of the real living wage, etc. So, this sort of assumption you can say, oh well, we'll support it or we won't support it, is a little bit academic. So, as a result of that, we've moved away a little bit from classing everything as business cases and actually classing those unavoidable things as service demand pressure. And obviously I'll give you the detail of that in the next report, the finer detail of that. But essentially the vast majority of that 15 million is pressure from social care. And one of the things that we've been very keen to really look at in detail this year is trying to look at and forecast that future demand for social care, because you'll be aware, and members will be aware acutely, and Councillor Paul amongst others has raised this point several times, that we seem to continually move into this setting a balanced budget and then immediately being overspent, setting a balanced budget being immediately overspent because of social care pressures. So we've done a lot of work with the service to really try and predict future demand, with a view then that we're setting a budget that hopefully is one that we can remain within in 26-27. Having said that, there's a clear balancing act to be there, because you can be so prudent in absolutely estimating demand at its highest level, but therefore actually underspending, and actually it means that other services have been cut differently, or more council tax has been raised, but equally you don't want to be so far under that you're immediately going into an overspend position in the following year. So I've tried to come up with what we believe to be a reasonable and fair estimate, a prudent assumption around that, without pushing it to its risk-free type levels. So between all of those pressures then, effectively we're in a position now that our shortfall is £20.6 million. So I guess you'll be aware, as Councillor Chris referenced, that the provisional local government settlement was issued last week, and what that meant for Conwy was that we were, along with 9 other authorities, at the minimum level, the floor level of a 2.3% uplift in the settlement, and for us that's about £6 million. I think for the first time, and it happened a little bit last year as well, but certainly moving away from historically, historically the provisional local government settlement and the final local government settlement have essentially been the same, bar very, very, very minor points. However, we know for a fact this year that there is still debate ongoing about unallocated money within the local government settlement. So the draft budget that was issued by Welsh Government a month or so ago set out that there was still £380 million of unallocated funding, of which 231 million is revenue funding that has yet to be allocated. We also know from the Chancellor's autumn statement last week that there were further consequentials into Wales of around £505 million over a number of years, and from my simplistic reading of that, there was about 186 million for next year in Wales, but I also believe that a lot of that related to business rates, but nonetheless there potentially was some additional funding there. So we're in a position now, unfortunately, that double-edged sword, because clearly further money and further funding via Welsh Government will be obviously very welcome and very positive indeed. But nonetheless, what we have is an incredible amount of uncertainty now, because it absolutely, the noises are that there absolutely is likely to be further additional money in the final budget that will be issued in January. What, however, we don't know is the level of that additional funding. However, I guess I am confident, and certainly in the context of the sort of percentages that are being rumoured, if that's the right word, that it certainly won't close our remaining gap, and therefore there are still significant challenges. So against that 20.6 million, as I say, the provisional settlement is suggesting an additional around another 6 million of funding, which therefore reduces it to around 14 million. So we're then into, well, what are our local decisions? And our local decisions then are obviously, your local decisions are obviously then around those points Councillor Chris made, which are around the impact on services in terms of what can we afford to deliver, are there efficiency savings that we can make, what council tax rise there might be, absolutely recognising that you have collectively as a council made very difficult decisions in the last 3 years over council tax rises, and obviously that therefore makes that even more emotive. And then we've got this missing bit, which is what will be this additional money from Welsh Government. So I think in broad terms, just simplistically, if we were to, for argument's sake, raise council tax at 5%, that would raise a bit less than, but roughly £5 million. So you can see, therefore, in terms of the equation, if we've got a 20 million gap, if we've had about 6 from Welsh Government, if we simplistically, and obviously pending a decision, get 5 from council tax, you can still see we've got a substantial gap that will need to be made up by other things and or more council tax. So that's the reality of where we are. I'll bring back, obviously, at the next some of the more granular detail behind behind the figures, and also in terms of that we will have moved on some of our work in terms of estimating further, and as I say, we've got that additional money that will come in January. I guess what I would be saying, however, is that, you know, I think there will be a danger now in light of the fact that we are likely to get some additional money in January, to sort of almost pause our decision making pending that. And I guess the point I would make is we absolutely will still have a financial gap, a substantial financial gap, and therefore I would really suggest that we can't afford to pause our thinking and our decision making about how we solve that gap. And as such, I think we need to plan on the basis of where we are now, and look at it more the other way, which is, if we get some additional money, what will we then take out of our decisions around how we're going to solve the problem, as opposed to only wait to solve the problem at that point in time. So that's where we are. So I hope that's useful, and obviously happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Amanda, for that really detailed explanation of where we are, and yet more grimness, isn't it, on? And also, we have to, I noted your comments about the pressures, the trying to budget for service demand, but we know very well, don't we, we only need several children with complex needs to come into our care, and the current rate of inappropriate discharges from Betsy Cadwallader pushing our budgets to the absolute extreme, and we have to, you know, just go with that. But I know in terms of the council tax rise, I know if my residents are anything to go by, the county conversation is going to tell us very, very clearly that they cannot take any more council tax rises. They're on their knees, especially our working families, in light of last week's budget. I just don't see how we can put more on them. But there we are. I shall open it up to questions. I shall start with Councillors Louise, Paul and Gareth. Councillor Louise.
Yes, thank you. And firstly, apologise, Chair, after my question, I need to leave because the meeting started a bit later and I've got another meeting to go to. So politics, it's election year, isn't it? So I'm guaranteed we will be seeing more bunts one way or other. But there's obviously been a change in Welsh Government. I remember a report previously was saying they were withholding about 300 million so then the next administration that came in could decide. Now that's changed to we're going to collaborate with partners in the Senedd before May. So there's a really distinct change there. So some messages obviously got through from the WLJ or something that they can't do that and they need the money. So in terms of collaboration with Senedd members and getting our voice heard as such, are you confident the WLGA are doing that? And hopefully we will note we need the money?
Yeah, I certainly think so. I mean, Reid might want to comment, but WLGA are absolutely very active in the space, and I know Councillor Anthony Hunt, who's the leader on finances, is certainly leading the way amongst, you know, certainly I know our, you know, Councillor Julie was at a meeting last week where she was obviously lobbying very actively on our behalf. So I think the messages are being heard by Welsh Government, that local government is a priority, and yeah, absolutely confident, as you say, that somewhere along the line there will be more money. I guess the difficulty is quite how much.
Thank you both. Reid, you just wanted to pop in there?
Yeah, just to reiterate, really, I think maybe for the first time ever, maybe, there's been cross-party discussions from a WLGA perspective with not just the government, but also with other political groups, which is natural, isn't it, when you think of the circumstances, where there's a deal to be made, possibly. Well, clearly all parties need to be informed about the position, and certainly from a local government perspective, you know, there are issues across the country, aren't there, and they're replicated. So the things that we discussed this morning, you know, every other county across Wales is facing those issues. So I guess from an officer perspective, I can give you the assurance, and I think I did this last week, there are also discussions from a chief exec level with government officials, etc., around explaining the pressures. You know, the numbers in terms of demand is clear for everyone to see. And I think maybe because of our demography, we're probably in a different place to some of the other local authorities. But you just need to look at the settlement in terms of who was on the floor. There are about 9 local authorities out of 22 who are on the floor. Now, that doesn't feel comfortable, does it? And of those 9, 4 of them are in North Wales. So I can give you some assurance that the voice of North Wales is clearly need to be heard, and I'm sure Julie will want to come in from a political perspective.
Hospital pass there, Ree?
No, I'm happy to come in. I just took my cough sweep. My cold is pretty much gone now, so that's good. Yeah, absolutely. I will continue to put pressure on. I was at a WLGA meeting to discuss finance with the Minister, Mark Drakeford, and yeah, initially it was quite surprising because it seemed as though everything was rosy. So I came in and kind of gave a real picture of certainly what we're feeling here in Conway, and I know many local authorities are. And as Rhian has said, you know, you've got 9 now. I mean, it's never been 9 local authorities that are at the bottom of the pile in terms of the budget that require the floor. And a number of those, as Rhian said, are in North Wales. I'm meeting with a leader this afternoon to discuss it and discuss an approach that we can take, coming together really to highlight the fact that it is the more rural local authorities that are impacted and that's not appropriate, and they need to find a way perhaps of addressing that with funding separately, or whether they look, I mean, we talk about looking at the formula, and I know Charlie did loads of work around that, but it's very clear that we cannot have a situation where rural authorities find themselves in this more dire financial position. It's just completely unacceptable. So yes, like I said, I'll be meeting with another leader this afternoon to discuss a sort of a planned approach with the different authorities that are affected, and I'll continue to do that, and hopefully the situation will begin to improve. But as Rhian said, you know, this is the first time since the Welsh Government was formed that some parties are part of the discussion. I think that's really healthy, because that pushes then, it pushes the government to listen and to find, I guess, hopefully that middle ground that means that all local authorities will benefit from that, and anything I can do to support that. And I know the Cabinet members and obviously Chief Execs and everyone really who has the opportunity need to continue pushing that conversation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Julie. And it's completely immoral, isn't it, that they're withholding that money when our social care and our residents are suffering like this. And, you know, thank you for the work you're doing, and hopefully it will bear fruit. So thank you for that. Next, we've got Councillor Paul.
Thank you, Chair. I think everybody in the Chamber knows my position on the 2 tools we have, and I welcome Amanda's very clear explanation of the situation. Yes, like Amanda, I don't expect a massive handout from UK and Welsh Government going forward. So my position is very clear that, yes, of course, if there are very clear efficiencies we can make still, of course, I will vote for those, but I agree we have to look at further cuts before we get further information in January. But I'm not going to be very supportive of cuts, because I think the tool we have to use is predominantly the council tax increases, and everybody knows my position. Charlie will come in straight away and say, but Paul, you put out campaign literature saying you didn't want to vote for council tax, and that's absolutely right, because that was the information I heard on the thing 3 years ago. But reality is reality. When I came and was a councillor and started overturning the stones, and I think nobody could question I've tried to do that in my time at this council, reality is reality, and I've had to have many difficult discussions with my residents, and I still come back to them and say, yeah, I will vote for council tax increases because I'm not prepared to see the consequences. And that comes back to me again to this, and I know Matt and Rin will look at me on this, this minimum statutory service. What is the minimum statutory service? How is it defined? And I know Matt will come back to me and say, well, it's partly about what we get complaints about. It's partly what finally ends up with the Ombudsman. It's finally what happens in litigation against us, and I fully respect all those points. But sadly, many of my residents, and of course some of these residents, they're vulnerable people, they're also, I won't say apathetic, but may struggle to vote in elections. Their situation is such that their housing conditions are very poor, and they are dependent on these minimum statutory services and requirements to get their problems sorted. Likewise, we all know we're only, one critical incident away from us not statutorily safeguarding some of our most vulnerable people. It's a scandal to me that this authority accepts nearly 300 vulnerable people on a waiting list to have their deprivation of liberty safeguards assessed. You imagine yourself in that existential loneliness, in your emotional turmoil, yes, supported by friends, family, carers, but waiting around for months and months and months to have an objective social worker look at all aspects of it with the other professions and reach the best outcomes for you. I can't see we're meeting minimum statutory services in that area. So I want us, for the budget report when it comes in January, I want us to have clear information about where we're most vulnerable in those minimum statutory services. Because I think already in a number of areas we are in that area where I don't think, hand on my heart, we may not be litigated on them, we may not have many ombudsman complaints around them, we may not even have many stage 1 and stage 2 complaints. And of course the people that this reality is hitting are not always the most articulate, the most able people to pursue through all those courses. They may not even have advocates to do that for them. But I really want to understand where we are most vulnerable in providing that minimum statutory service. Because to me, in whole areas of this council, I'm not sure we can cut anything else. And that's why I don't like it. I know about council tax arrears. I know people in my constituency who pay their monthly council tax bill, if they can pay it, with their credit card. I know that reality, but if that's the only tool we've got, we need to take that tool. One other point. Rachel Reeves has been very much challenged about some of her heroic assumptions and estimates going forward. And I looked to Chris Cater today, out there in the ether somewhere, to make sure that this year, because I think in previous years we've had some pretty heroic assumptions and estimates, that we do have totally realistic estimates going forward. And I know work's been done and I respect that work, but we do not need heroic assumptions and estimates which mean the first quarter figures come in and we're massively overspent. So that's another challenge, because it's a political challenge. I'm sure Amanda will do her professional job, but we must ensure that assumptions going forward and estimates going forward are really as robust as they possibly can, because it's no benefit to anybody that we start overspending immediately the budget is set.
Thank you, Paul, and I'm sure Amanda will be taking note of everything you've said there about the correct estimate. Microphone.
Can Rin come back on this minimum statutory service and the requirements? Because I don't think it's a problem to put that detail into that budget report.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. I think we've discussed this, haven't we, on a few occasions, and I think the work that CIPFA did identified, and I think all local authorities at the moment are trying to identify what that minimum is. It's never easy, because a lot of it is subjective, and also there's a lot of the work that we do that isn't statutory at all. You know, and some of the examples that you were mentioning there around the support needed are not statutory. They're discretionary services that we provide and our residents expect us to provide. And that is the problem we've got, isn't it? That we can pay, we have the budget for what we have. And we always have to look, therefore, about where the line is in terms of those statutory minimum services. I wouldn't disagree, Paul, around some of your descriptions there around where we are, because clearly there are budgetary issues and capacity issues within those services that need, ideally would need significant more funding. I think you can just look at the proposals that are coming through in terms of savings and efficiencies, where we've taken 92 million out of the budget over the past 10 years. Well, clearly finding more efficiencies and savings is incredibly challenging. And also, when you look at the proportion of council tax compared to what is coming in from government, council tax has gone up, but contribution from government has gone down. So all these things are sort of conspiring against us slightly. I think we can look at what's possible in terms of bringing information. I'm not sure we can bring all information across all services, but I think certainly through the budget group meetings, I think we've had some really good discussions around some of that, around where we are in terms of services and where we hope to be moving forward, and how we're looking at those services to try and make them more efficient and more effective. But I suspect that we will have this discussion moving forward. How we can present that information in a budget report is, I think we can have a discussion around that. But I think it's a fair point made, Constable.
Thank you very much for that, Reen. Next, we've got Councillor Gareth and Councillor David.
Thank you. Just start off by saying, Amanda and Chris, I don't envy your predicament of how you balance the budget and the decisions that are going to have to be made to actually get a balanced budget, because there's a lot of indications that we're still facing headwinds. We've had reports a few weeks ago about the fact that residents were running out of savings, and we're seeing increasing requests to fund care home funding. We're having increasing there's extra pressure in getting people out of the health board's care. But then the burden falls on ourselves as a local authority in trying to get the money off the health board to pay for that shifting care. We touched upon this morning, didn't we, about the number of people struggling to pay their council tax. And to me, that's a good indicator that people are under financial pressure. And that then has that knock-on effect of causing increased strain on children's services, on social services, and on housing. But also, to put it into context, is what's not in the report. We get the gap. And just to check my maths, it looks as if our starting point is a council tax increase of 16.74%, or roughly £316 per increase per household. So, that's a sobering place to start. And I know we're likely to get some extra money and we're going to have to save some costs, but that is a huge, huge gap and is a really difficult place to start from. Thank you.
Yeah, I haven't done the maths, so, but I'm not doubting it would be in that kind of region. Obviously, one of the things that I haven't referenced explicitly in here is that obviously there are we do know there will be some budget reduction proposals, predominantly as a result of income generation, the work that we've done on fees and charges, etc. And there are some other things that we're aware of that will help. So yeah, I'll quantify those next time. But yeah, with of that gap, there are some things that I know that will be of benefit to us. We also, I think, will need to think about what are our assumptions around for instance, the new Pride in Place money and how that might help the budget situation as compared to say prosperity previously. So I think there are a few things that we certainly that in the context of Chris and I helping to navigate a path through for members, there are certainly some things that help. But I would be misleading you if I didn't say that I still think there is a substantial shortfall, even once we get additional money that is going to require difficult decisions, no doubt.
Yeah, thank you. I can't promise that my calculations of where we're starting from are absolutely correct, but I do think it's really important that we never lose focus on how much is it likely to cost our ratepayers out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gareth. Councillor Chris Cater online as the portfolio holder. Did you want to pop in there before I go to Councillor David?
Thank you, Chair. It's just about the 231 million that's been carried forward pending agreements by the Welsh Government or by the Senedd, really. When Councillor Julie and I went to the local government finance seminar, it was made very obvious that the Welsh Government had only put something like 2.2% in for health, and which is below inflation, and it was likely to be necessary to put 3.8% in for health funding next year. So that would swallow up the extra money, and there'd be nothing left for local government again. So I know, Chair, that you watch the events in the local health board very carefully, and we all know the financial difficulties they're having. So I wouldn't be confident that any of this money held back is going to go substantially to local government, but perhaps I'll be surprised. Anyway, just from that seminar, that seemed to be the message, unfortunately.
Thank you, Chris, and you're probably, unfortunately, very right. And of course, we in social care who pick up all the pieces, don't we, here, will suffer yet again. Our residents and our staff will suffer again because of their incompetence. So thank you very much for that. Next, we'll go to Councillor David in the Chamber. Councillor David.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think a 2.3 settlement is an invitation to the local authorities. They're given that signing settlement to put up council tax, and that is, I don't know whether they actually spell it out when representatives from this authority speak to them, because that's basically what they're asking us to do, because we've got inflation more than a percentage point higher. We've got the sort of local government sort of employee settlements, 3.54%. So basically they're telling us to put council tax up. They need to be more direct. They need to actually say that publicly. If they want local authorities to put council tax up, they should actually say, and that's what they never do they? So we've got the dilemmas on what to do. Now, we need to cover the homes and domiciliary care. That needs to be done. We need to prioritise how we spend the money. But certainly, as Councillor Shaw was saying, residents in Old Colwyn can't afford these big council tax increases that we're talking about. I know he was only actually saying it might be. He wasn't saying it's going to be. He's looking at 16%. We can't afford that. And there's all the other pressures I mean, some of the residents in Colwyn Ward, they don't go to Cadogan, they actually go to West End surgery, and you can't get appointments there. All you can get is emergency appointments. And lo and behold, we've got West End Health suddenly popped up, private organisation where you can see a GP. That's going to start in the new year, where you can see a GP more or less straight away, you know, but if you pay, you know, and really, you know, and all these extra pressures that are being put on residents, totally unacceptable. So I think we need to have a more robust, is that the word, more to tell them that, you know, if they want to put council tax up, they need to spell it out rather than just and as Councillor Chris was saying, the money that might be available in January, I don't believe, well, we don't know. We have to go on the assumption we're only going to get the 2.3%. So I'm very, and just to mention the Fire and Health Authority, and some members are actually members on that, we need to keep that low as well. You know, I mean, well above inflation increases on that, that's an extra pressure as well. So we need to keep that down. And maybe our representatives on those boards could actually spell that out, that residents just can't afford these large increases. So it's very disappointing, the settlement. It's very disappointing, you know, really. And we've got to prioritise within this council, really, to decide how, you know, we're going to go forward with this. And we're going to have to make cuts, but it can't be in the services, the statutory services. We've got to look again at non-statutory services in order to do it. I mean, it is not possible for people to be able to pay such high council tax rates now. So that's what we've got to do. We're in an impossible situation, but it can't all go on the council tax. That's what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor David. And I know Councillor Julie is determined and will be going down there. Never underestimate a determined woman. So we go to the last bit. Oh no, we've got Councillor Anne, then Councillor Gromway online, and then we're going to the vote. Councillor Anne.
Yeah, I'll be a quick, Chair. I mean, first of all, I'd like to start by saying I'm absolutely horrified that the health hub for Conwy West, which is severely lacking resource and access, is just being quashed, and obviously it's been very quietly voted on. Just absolutely horrified, so thanks for sharing that. And I hope there is potentially some action to look at a judicial review, but obviously that's not within our scope. Next thing in terms of this discussion in this report, I mean, talk about a sombre report and a sombre discussion. I mean, we have this every year, and every year it gets worse than we possibly think it ever can. I mean, there is just such a lack of respect to local government officers and members who are actually trying to do their best to deliver the services that our people need, and the Welsh Government who are forcing us to produce more and more services whilst reducing our monies. I mean, it appears to me that, I mean, I've had a number of private conversations with cabinet members in the last few weeks. I think we are probably facing cuts like never before. And in reality, I don't think we've really cut that much. We've sort of, you know, trimmed around the edges, and that's for a good reason and from a good place. But I think we need to be really honest with our residents, starting today. And I actually think we need to have some sort of media campaign that actually starts that process off. I think we need to haul in the regional MSs in terms of what they're going to do, because they're a cross-party representation. And that could be, you know, networking with the 9 councils who are on the floor, as Councillor Julie has shared with us. But, you know, I think by doing the effective planning that Amanda is suggesting, and that's, you know, starting probably from this statutory minimum that's been discussed, that's where we can actually point out the realities of the predicament. And for me, that creates leverage, and that's leverage that we don't have time to waste to actually exploit and to share. I think Alunad Morgan and all the meetings with Mark Drakeford, you know, we have them year on year, and to be frank, I don't think we get that much out of them, and we get little bits, and, you know, that's not to underestimate, you know, all of the members and cabinet members who over the years have done it. I've done it myself, but I just think we need to be cuter about sharing with the public the consequences of the Welsh Government's actions. And it really is shocking that, 380 million has been removed from the pie, and potentially the 180, I think 86 that Rachel Reid's budget will give for Wales for this year, again, will probably either be held back or just given to Betsy Cadwallader, the worst performing health authority in the country. So, I would really like Cabinet members particularly to look at what is the strategy to actually exploit pre and post Christmas, and actually make sure that we get ourselves on the airwaves and actually share the predicament and what the planning, the real statutory minimum planning actually means for our residents, because I think our residents need to know. And when it comes to January and we are going to be doing the consultation, I think rather than asking, questions in a very sort of general way, I think we do need to actually share the detail and ask our residents what they think about cutting parks and gardens, just for pluck it up in the air, plucking whatever, this planning that you're going to do that's about statutory minimum, because I'm really concerned about social care, and as you all know, I'm really, really concerned about schools, and we don't have the detail really on anything in this report. I know Amanda's going to bring it to us, but we all know the feedback that we get, and obviously it's really, really concerning. So I think we need to use now, and between now and sort of the next report in January, despite it being Christmas and New Year, very wisely. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Anne. Just have to pause to resuscitate Councillor Mike when you said cutting parks and gardens here. But I'm with you on the green agenda. We just can't afford it anymore, statutory only, as I've banged on about in various budget working groups. OK, did anyone want to come back on any of that to Councillor Anne? Councillor Julie is going to come in, thank you. Then we've got Councillor Gromway and Councillor Kay.
Thank you, Chair. And yeah, I share your concerns, Anne, in terms of the financial position. It's not good enough. That's what I said to the Minister Mark Drakeford last week. I know it's what Charlie's been saying for a long time. And in terms of a response right now and how we engage with our community, so I know I mentioned during my leadership election last month, my presentation around communication. I did my first video last week. I had to wait because I was full of this awful cold for ages. I did my first video last week, which is just a bit of an introduction, where I've shared that I've set up a new email, which is just leader@conway.gov.uk. My second video is going to be more around finances and explaining a little, and I will encourage the communities to contact Welsh Government directly. I'll find the best way of doing that to make it easy, quick and clear as part of the video. And I will continue to highlight our concerns. Obviously, I have a thorough understanding, Anne, in terms of education and somewhat with social care as well. I raised that directly with the ministers last week around the pressures that we have in social care and how what we're having in terms of an increase of 2.3% doesn't go anywhere near to just address those pressures before you look at anything else. As I said, I'm meeting with one of the leaders who represents a rural authority this afternoon, who is also one of the authorities who's on the floor the same as we are, and we'll discuss a planned approach as to how we address this, and address it as soon as we can do, really. I've written here, do we look to contact so that all 9 of us who are on the floor come together to highlight our concerns around that and why it's unfair and not equitable. But I'll feed back to you, Anne, and to members once I have an idea as to what that might look like going forward. But yeah, be assured that I won't be quiet. I will highlight it, as will Cabinet members, and as I said before, will the Chief Exec and 151 Officer and Strategic Director for Social Care and Education, and our heads of service in any opportunity that we get. And I would just encourage everybody, staff members, unions obviously, can be very proactive, and I would encourage our union members to share that with their reps and ask them to highlight the pressures that we have and how difficult it's going to be to try and meet that and provide the service that we need to provide. So I will continue to bang the drum as loudly as I feel we need to. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Julie. Councillor Ann, did you want to come back on that at all?
Just thanks for that today, because I know how tough it is, and I know how deaf it quite often appears that Welsh Government is. So it's banging a drum. Sometimes it just doesn't seem to sort of get listened to. I mean, I appreciate that you and your team are doing a heck of a lot of work, and it's really hard. And there's a lot of political podcasts around this day, so I just think comms is a real opportunity, and I think just use all the tools available, and I wish you luck, and obviously anything that us as backbenchers can do, obviously we're here behind you.
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry, Councillor John, your camera's swiveled, you're upside down. Oh, there, you've gone. I don't know what happened there, but no, you're back again, upside down. Give your camera a twizzle, switch off, and lovely, thanks. Okay, Councillor Kay, if you want to pop in now before we go. Hey, you're back. Well, you're in the room. Well done, John. Acrobatic, we like that. Okay.
I've got the giggles now.
I know.
Need to speak.
And me. Thank you for that, Anne. Sorry, it was a bit distracting. Councillor Kay, then Councillor Gromway.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back to Councillor Gareth, because I can see that the local media headlines are going to be that Conwy are raising their council tax by 16%, and I just wanted to reassure anyone listening, residents and media, that that isn't going to be the case, because we all know that will be the headline later on today. What Gareth was saying was that is what the gap needs to be, and I just wanted to clarify that, because I know that will be the take out of this meeting from other people. And also just to come back to Councillor Paul earlier on, and it also goes to what Anne was saying about our health and social care issues. I just wanted to reassure Councillor Paul that on the Dole's waiting list, those people are known to us, we have a plan in place, and as much as it isn't where we'd like the service to be, those people are safe, and what we have in place I'm quite happy with as one of the portfolio holders there. Our main concern with health and social care business cases at the moment is our MASH, which is our multi-agency safeguarding hub, and I've got meetings today around that. So I just want to reassure that we are doing all we can as a team to meet those requirements. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kay. Yes, I was going to add that in on my summing up, that is not a proposal, and it's not what Councillor Gareth intended at all. It's not what any of us want. It's very serious business, and it's absolutely not. And I know you can count on the support of members about the MASH, the importance of that. So good luck with that meeting. We will now go to Councillor Gronway very quickly, then we're going to the vote, because we've got another report to go, and it's been a long morning. Councillor Gronway online.
Need to press
and push to speak. Yeah, there we go.
Thank you for letting me speak on the committee, obviously. I can already see that we are starting the political posturing pre-budget, which is normal, as we do every year, because people will be trying to say that we have to set a low council tax. We have to set a realistic council tax that will be appropriate for the needs of the residents of Conwy. We've heard a lot of talk about social services today, as usual, and that will be one of the priorities. But as a former council member for ERF, I think we have to be realistic as well. There are statutory duties within the ERF function, which is maintaining our highways in a safe and appropriate condition. And despite years and years of putting business cases on to maintain that infrastructure, they've always been cut back halved, if not less, of what the actual need is to meet the demands for what all of us use, which is our roads. I've seen cuts during my period as a council member in maintenance of roads because the budget has been cut, simple as that, and we all suffer the consequences of that. So I think we need to set an appropriate council tax. I know with it being a election year in the Assembly, there will be some political bribes prior to the Assembly elections, but then we will have our elections in 27, and there will be this desire, no doubt, to set a very low council tax to get re-elected. But I think we've got to be careful. If we set a low council tax this year, the job in 2027 will be even harder. So it's about setting an appropriate budget, and I'm sure Amanda will guide us to do that.
Dear Councillor Gromway, I don't think it's political posturing. I think everyone is hugely concerned and coming from the same place. The finance is an absolute disaster and we've got to pull every string we possibly can. So thank you very much for that. Right, members, have we got a proposer and a seconder for this budget? Councillor Charlie, this budget report, sorry, not budget. Councillor Charlie is proposing. Second, anyone? Councillor David is seconding. Thank you. Could we open the vote, please? And if everyone could vote. There we go. And if we could close the vote, please. Yep. And that's been carried unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you to Amanda and team and the officers that have attended to help with all this. We now go on to our final report this morning. We're considering a report by the Head of Audit and Procurement on information governance, arrangements for managing freedom of information requests, pages 170 to 192. And Councillor Stephen Price, the Cabinet Member for Housing, Regulatory and Audit, is going to introduce the report, and Sinead Parry, Head of Audit and Procurement, is going to present the report. So thank you for your patience, everybody. Thank you, Sinead and team, for your patience. So Councillor Stephen.
Can you hear me? Yeah? Everybody online can hear me? I'll take that as a yes.
Yes, thumbs up.
Thank you, Chair. Audit Wales commissioned did an audit on our commissioning services and came up with 3 recommendations. One surrounding the meteric system, training and benchmarking. And I'm confident that the action plan proposed will go a long way to address the current issues, and would like to thank the small team for their commitment and hard work. So without further ado, I'd like to hand you over to Sinead and Sam. Thank you.
Diolch, Councillor Stephen. Sinead.
Iawn, diolch Cadeirydd, a diolch Cynghorydd Stephen. Round da pawb.
Good afternoon, everyone.
25, Audit Wales reviewed the Council's arrangements for managing freedom of information requests, hot off the press. The key findings from the review is that the Council has a strong strategic framework, including the management of FOI requests. However, the FOI performance is below the Information Commissioner's Office 90% benchmark, with only 54% of requests answered within the 20-day deadline in 24-25. To further strengthen performance, Audit Wales made 3 recommendations, including assessing the value of the use of the system used to record FOIs, the establishment of formal FOI training for staff who handle requests, and awareness-raising materials explaining the FOI process to all other employees, as well as expanding the FOI process by adding internal and external benchmarking. An action plan has been developed and is attached in Appendix B. The action plan has been endorsed by Audit Wales. Progress updates will be reported to the Governance and Audit Committee every 6 months, and I would like to take this opportunity to provide further assurance regarding the progress made since assuming responsibility for the unit in February 24. An additional officer was recruited in September 24, and further administrative support was identified and implemented from the 1st of November 25. A more detailed action plan has been developed to strengthen performance, and quarterly performance reporting is undertaken to the strategic leadership team, which commenced in July 25. Also, the detailed action plan will accompany the second quarter performance report, which will be presented to SLT on the 3rd of December, and will also be presented to the Governance and Audit Committee on the 8th of December. Members are asked to scrutinise the effectiveness of the actions put in place to respond to the recommendation within the report, and we are happy. Dylan Berry, the Information Governance Manager, and myself are both happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you. Diolch.
Thank you very much for that, Sinead. Okay, members, questions, please. Start with Councillor Paul, then Councillor Gareth.
I have a great deal of sympathy for Dylan and the officers that feed into that system, because I think if our overall publication of information about many things was more effective and efficient on our website and wherever, then we wouldn't get so many requests. Because let me own up, sometimes when I'm trying to find data about Conway, I find it easier to go on to ChatGPT than I do on going onto our website, because it pulls things together in a topic heading, and okay, you have to look at it skeptically, but if it's got a reference, that information and that data's good, I would say, because it is referring back sometimes to our website, sometimes to other government reports or whatever. And I think we get a lot of FOI requests, and you hear it on the ground because people feel it's not easy to get information from Conway, and then they get this sort of angst that they're hiding things from us, and then they put an FOI request in. So I do think we need to look at how we post information, if that's the technical term, and then we won't get so much angst and frustration, which leads to FOI requests. I don't know what you think about that.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Poor, for your comments. We have noticed that, and as part of the detailed action plan, there is one action to collate and analyse the regular FOIs that we get in, and to create information to upload onto the internet, onto the public website, so it's there for people to see. That is one of our actions that we intend to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Sianed. You can thank Councillor Paul. Yeah, lovely. Councillor Gareth next.
Thank you. I think the key point, obviously, with the freedom of information that comes through is what Audit Wales have put on there is it's all about transparency and accountability on public services. However, it also takes resources to do it. And my main worry about this is that it seems that, did we know about the shortfall against the benchmark, and was it planned? Because, if it was a case of we'd had a paper, we'd looked at the resources, we decided we couldn't afford those resources, and we'd looked at the risks and decided actually it's an acceptable risk that we can't afford to actually hit these deadlines, that we've got other priorities within the council. And I think there's provision there within what it says from Audit Wales, with their recommendations, that if we don't think it's delivering value or they're unattainable, then we don't have to go exactly with what they're recommending. And it ties back to the discussions we've had of where are our priorities. Is it looking after our residents and our individuals, and trying to get that balance of where is the line with statutory services? But I think we can only do this if we actually understand the risks we're taking, and the Cabinet or the scrutiny committees or the council are actually saying we can't fulfil everything we do. We want to do it, but there are areas where we have to ease back on, and we have to take calculated risks and make financial decisions. And I know we've appointed somebody else into that, and I'm not saying it's right that we're not fulfilling the things, but I'm just saying maybe this is an area where we could push back to government and send a message back to Cardiff. Actually, we want to do it, but we can't afford to do it. We've got other priorities here. We've assessed it. As I said, I don't know what the risks are, what the consequences are, but we need to be pushing back sometimes with all these things that are actually imposed on us. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for your question. So from the point of view, it's not from the Welsh Government. This is legislation that's passed through central government any public body has to attain this. The regulator is the Information Commissioner's Office. If we were audited by the Information Commissioner's Office, as they have done with many other public bodies, they normally give you either a 3 or 6 month period to turn around and say you need to clear your entire backlog. It's a statutory function. We are paid through public money. It's not a
that gives
choice.
Me a better
it's something that you
understanding
have
of the
to.
risks.
It's a determination within legislation that the expectation is you must fulfil that requirement. Hopefully that's explained.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Amanda?
Yeah, so just to say, I think though the point you make, Councillor Gareth, is really valid in the sense of I think probably where we find ourselves a little bit is that we would recognise now through this work and through work we'd already undertaken anyway that there are improvements we need to make in terms of some of our processes, some of our published data, some of our training, etc. And I think what I'll feel much more comfortable is once Shona Dullan and the team have had the ability to effectively implement all of that action plan, we can then in a way take a new restock about, as you say, our capacity to actually fulfill the regulations fully and you know, to the extent we potentially are lacking at that point, you know, notwithstanding, as Dylan says, the actual legislation behind it, then we can make a proper assessment of whether we need more resource or not, and whether that's resource we're prepared to put in or not. But I think I feel very much that you know, we can improve the capacity we have currently by addressing the points in the action plan. And what I would also observe, and I think it goes to the point that because SLT, just from an internal management point of view, will now be looking at this much more closely and regularly. I think that allows that debate around risk more appropriately, and we can then obviously bring that through to democracy as and when is appropriate.
Yeah, as I said, my main thrust is it's worrying if we don't know what risks we're taking and where we're falling short, where we know and it's a considered policy and we know the risks, and if we're falling short, well, you know, that's maybe a little bit more acceptable when it comes down to it. Thank you.
Thank you all. Next, Councillor David, then Councillor Charlie.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. FOI is a statutory sort of thing that we have to do. As Barry said, it's legislation. We have to. We don't want to be putting extra resources into that. We want to try and not have as many. Now, local Senate members are putting in FOI requests when they could, if we worked a lot more closely with them and actually gave them the information they're asking for, then they wouldn't be putting FOI requests in. So I think that the message is that we need to, certainly with local members of the Senate, we need to work more closely with them, give them the information they want, and then they wouldn't be putting FOI requests in, because we're going to get to the stage where if it does increase, we're going to have to put more resources into that. And I think, you know, we've got enough budget pressures already, haven't we? So that's why I'm asking that we cooperate more with the local members, and at least from that direction we won't be getting the number of FOI requests we're getting at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor David. Councillor Charlie.
Yeah, deal, Chair. Yeah, I think what we're asked here is to approve an action plan to improve our performance, and I think the actions that are set out will do that. So with that in mind, I'd like to move the recommendations, Chair.
Lovely, thank you, Councillor Charlie. Have I got a second for that? Councillor David. Okay, if we could open the vote, please. There we go. Yeah, lovely. And you've all voted, and if we could close the vote, please. Okay, lovely. That was carried unanimously. Diolch, members, and thank you to everyone. We're sorry about the technical hitches at the start, and for those watching online, when they finally get this delayed recording, we apologise. System failure outside of our control. So thank you very much indeed, everyone. Diolch, and won't see you till Christmas now. We will, obviously, but okay. Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye.